So I'm really excited to talk about and share some of my experiences grafting this year. This is my first year getting into grafting, and I've been really focused on the native nut trees as well as some of the native fruit trees. And what I don't want to make this video into is a how to graft video. I don't feel like I have enough experience yet to really talk about this is how I make the cuts and this is how to be successful in grafting. But what I do want to do is share my experience and talk about some of the things that I just got to be a part of this year. So I attended a grafting workshop and I got some scion wood from a friend, mostly black walnut scion wood as well as a little bit of hickory scion wood. And so I basically just started experimenting grafting on wild trees in the landscapes that I am on. And so right here, we're looking at a blueberry bush right now, actually, that has some blueberries on it. This was, back earlier in the season before they were ripe. And the tall shrub behind it that I've pointed at several times is a black walnut. This happens to be in my backyard. And what happened was I came out here to do the graft, and first of all, I had to cut my way to these trees. When you start grafting on wild trees, one thing you notice a lot is that they're growing oftentimes in neglected areas where there's wild blackberry brambles and all sorts of other, there's probably grapevines and all sorts of other plants coming up here. I couldn't even walk around this blueberry before I started this that morning. And so part of what I was doing was trying to give myself access to the blueberries so that once the berries became ripe, I could come and pick, which that worked out well. But there was also a lot of, brambles and sweet gums and other things up and around this black walnut. And right now it's tall and above all that stuff. But in order to do the graft, I'm going to have to cut the tree, and so the tree will then be shorter. And it's important when you're doing these grafts to make sure that the tree has access to sufficient sunlight, because for the graft to take, you need the tree to be growing pretty vigorously. And so if they're in the shade, they may be growing, but they're often slow. And so there's another black walnut back there that I'm thinking about grafting at the time of recording this video. What happened after I recorded the video was that I realized I didn't have quite enough scion wood. Some of the scion wood I had dried out. I think I hadn't been storing it properly. And so I got a bunch of grafts done, right when I got the scion wood, and then I didn't wind up getting to graft these trees because the material I had dried up. But the preparation work was still good to do, and this is a good learning opportunity. And there's a nice peach tree back in here too, which you can kind of see through the sweet gums. It's hasn't really been making any peaches. It's kind of tired, has been somewhat neglected, but it's still alive and still back there. So I'm somewhat hopeful maybe we'll get some peaches off it in the future, or if not, it will eventually pass on and give way to something else. But yeah, grafting these native nut trees is something I'm really hype about because I love the flavor, the taste, and the abundance of native nuts. They grow well without care from human. They do well here without us paying much attention to them. I'm sure they like to get paid attention to, but they don't need us to pay attention to them. And they taste amazing. I mean, black walnut is just like, to me anyway, way better than any store-bought, English walnut. And same with hickory nuts. But the problem is, these nuts are a lot of work to crack out. I don't mind cracking the nuts as much, but it's the getting the actual nut out of the shell once it's cracked can be time-consuming and difficult and somewhat frustrating sometimes. And so that's where grafting comes in, because people have identified, either in the wild or through breeding programs, selected cultivars of these species, black walnut, hickory, persimmon, etc., that have either bigger nuts, bigger fruits, thinner shells that crack out easier. And it's important to note that I would say like 99%, probably 100% of the time, maybe nothing's 100%, but most of the time when we have these improved cultivars of the wild, native nuts and fruits, this is a result of indigenous people, over thousands of years being in relationship with these species. Some of it's probably wild variation that would have happened on its own, but a lot of it is human selection that's been going on for many, many generations. And so, we owe a massive debt to these people. They have basically stewarded these trees over thousands of years, and that's why they're still around. And so you can get scion wood of these, preferable cultivars, right, and graft them in trees in your region, and that's how you'll have them in your environment. So that's what I'm trying to learn how to do. And right now we're looking at some hickory grafts that I did. This is in an area where there's a lot of tree of heaven popping up that I'm trying to manage. I've talked about this in other videos, but so there's some hickory in here. So I had a little bit of hickory scion wood, and I'm sticking that on, seeing if it takes. And the other thing that I want to talk about here with the grafting is, in addition to like wanting these nuts just to be able to eat them and have them in my landscape, I also want to continue to do breeding work and selection, right? So if we plant a lot of these, or establish a lot of these grafted trees, and then we start collecting the seed off of those trees and planting that seed, now we have a good a reasonable chance that those seedlings might grow similar to their parents, right? So we might make new cultivars that have good attributes as far as like thin shell and large nut. But we're also, because we're planting from seed, we're going to be gaining some adaptability, hopefully, to this changing climate. So it's a way to increase our resilience in the face of climate change, and also hopefully continue to improve the quality of the food, the nut and the fruit that we're getting. So it's partly just wanting the food to eat, and it's also partly wanting to have breeding material available. Right now, this is a black walnut graft that I did do around the corner from where I live that actually succeeded and took. You saw the little sprout there coming up out of the graft. Yeah, like I said before, black walnut have proven pretty difficult to graft. I'm excited to continue trying it next year, but I had probably like only a 20-25% success rate. And I think part of that might have been my scion wood drying out. And there's a lot of things I want to get into, nuances of it, which I'll talk about in future videos, next season as I graft more. But it is a little bit difficult to graft some of these native nut trees, but I find it really rewarding and exciting, and I'm glad to be able to share this experience with you all. And yeah, hopefully I can get to do more of this in the future, and eventually we'll have a lot of grafted nut trees around here. This is long-term generational work, but it's fun.